Hello everyone, it's Sly. This is a different kind of video where I'm going to be talking about my experience learning Korean for the last few months and talking a little bit about my history, learning languages, reflecting on this month, well not this month anymore because it's now June, as you can see in the bottom right hand corner of my desktop screen, but May, we're reflecting on May. Talking about additionally my plans for speedrunning a bit later. Once we get through the Korean stuff, I will touch on that. But yeah, I've been learning Korean since the start of the year. I've seen a lot of people record their own similar sort of videos where they talk about their experience in the last month and just what they learned and their approaches to learning Korean. I thought it would be fun to do myself. Usually used to seeing speedrun content from me. Hopefully we'll have more of that soon. I will touch on that later. Hint hint, Switch 2 is coming out soon. And by soon I mean literally in a few days. So that'll be lots of fun. But like to start, I reckon it's probably good to touch on my history learning languages. So in middle school I studied French. I was okay. I was a little above average, but look, it wasn't really my favorite class, and I didn't spend any time studying outside of class unless it was compulsory. And you get further into high school, you get to choose what subject you want to continue with, and French wasn't really one of them. It wasn't really on my list to continue, and I didn't really have space for it anyway. And I guess French wasn't too difficult to start with, just because it's so similar to English in the sense that the alphabet looks familiar. The sounds are familiar to some extent. They are different, of course, but it's a bit more familiar than learning a language like Korean. So I was first interested in Korea back in 2016 to a friend who showed me K-pop. I got pretty into it over the few years. If you watch my streams and my speedruns, you know that I'm always listening to Korean music. As time went on, I transitioned more into Korean R&B and hip-hop. Started watching K-dramas around 2020 and COVID. They were great for getting through COVID. 100%. And then I kind of been exposed to Korean content for a long time at this point. And I was like, right, I should just try learning Korean. So at the beginning of 2024, I learned Hangul. I learned the Korean alphabet. I pretty much only touched the basics. I could read and know what sounds the characters made on like a fundamental level, but spelling rules, I wasn't really quite aware of. I was a slow reader, and at some point I did try to do karaoke. I could barely keep up with the slow songs, but I did learn how to write. And at this time I did start working full time, so Korean kind of went on the back burner while I adjusted to the full-time life. However, last year in December of 2024, I did start slowly getting back into it. But instead of focusing on, I kind of got through I kept working through that Taught to Me in Korean Hangul Master textbook, which helped me kind of refresh my memory on which characters made which sounds, and then there was a lot of handwriting practice and handwriting reading. I haven't actually finished that book. I kind of stopped when I got to the handwriting reading because I wanted to actually move on to the actual language and the grammar instead of the how to read someone's really messy, quickly written handwriting. So I probably started level 1 of Taught to Me in Korean at the beginning of January 2025. I took a pretty traditional approach in the sense that I got the textbooks and the workbooks, and I only really did the textbooks and workbooks. I wasn't really doing anything else. I would maybe spend I might do 2 lessons in a week. That might only take me an hour in the week. I wasn't spending that much time, but I was starting to get properly into the language, and I did find an Anki deck. If you don't know what Anki is, it's a spaced repetition software. It allows you to just review flashcards in a pretty efficient manner. But anyway, I used some decks that I found online that mimic the Taught to Me in Korean's level 1 and 2 content. But I was only doing 10 new cards a day at that point, and that's not very many. It was taking me less than 10 minutes. Probably even less than 5 minutes at the time. But I finished level 1 of Taught to Me in Korean, both the workbooks and the textbooks in February, and then I finished level 2 at the beginning of May. So it took me 4 months to get through level 1 and 2, which is not bad. I felt I definitely wasn't putting that much time in, but it was good. But towards the end of April, I kind of kept coming across language learning via immersion. I decided to try it myself through the end of April. There's a lot out there about learning language through immersion. There's a refold that tells you like set up to Anki, like what you should learn in order, which is like a good guide. Retro even has this Korean path to fluency, sorry for the slight flashbang, with like all sorts of Anki decks, what to focus on at what points in your study. But basically, immersion learning is exposing yourself to the content and the language rather than taking a more traditional approach, but you are still using things like Anki for your vocabulary, you're still studying grammar on the side, but you're kind of letting the immersion take control. You're using that to spend most of your time studying. This could be like watching Netflix in Korean subtitles, no subtitles, but you don't really want to see any English or any of your native language. You just want to try and understand as best as you can, which is the go. So I tried that. I wasn't taking it too seriously, but I did start tracking my time spent immersing to take it more seriously towards I think beginning of May. Yeah, I started taking it more seriously at the beginning of May. And probably started using Anki, and actually instead of spending 5 to 10 minutes per day, I was spending between 25 and 40 minutes at some points in the day. So I was using Retro's Anki decks. He's got a few already built here. I am working on my own, but there's not really much in it yet. Through things like sentence mining. Kimchi Reader is a great tool for sentence mining. Let's see if it will work. Oh yeah, so here you go. You can pick up words, you can mark them as seen or known. It's very, very useful. That's one way you can learn new vocabulary through immersing. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I will talk about my progress this month. So I am at level 3, lesson 16 of Taught to Me in Korean. If you go to Kimchi Reader, there's 430, now 427, but there was 413 no ones at the end of the month, which is quite cool. There's also a lot of words that are marked seen that I actually know, like 가끔. That's sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. There's a lot of words here just scrolling through that I know the meaning of, but I haven't marked yet, so I'll probably go do that at some point later. I'll go through and mark them all. Anki, I studied 31 of 31 days of May. Every day I did my Anki. That's how many cards it reviewed. How many cards that I've learned that are quote unquote young. How many mature. There's all sorts of stats. You can see a lot. I'm not going to talk to all of it, but it's quite cool to see all the fun graphs. I like graphs. And then in terms of my actual sort of breakdown, sorry for the flash dang, I spent, from what I tracked, there was like a start at the start. I didn't track. I kept forgetting to track, but that's okay. And then I kind of took it a lot more seriously towards the last 2 weeks. You can see priming is like flashcards, my Anki decks. It's learning grammar. It's the traditional approach, whereas everything else is passive immersion, is like listening to a podcast while I'm doing something else. Intensive is very focused on what you're watching and clicking like pretty much every word to make sure you know what the meaning of the word is. And free flow is kind of just winging it. You don't want to stop in free flow, you kind of just want to immerse. But this is pretty outdated because halfway, well actually towards the end of May, I kind of refactored this and changed everything. So stuff that's intensive immersion should be free flow and like it should be halved. So it's not quite relevant, but it will be configured properly for next month. And you can see like how much time I've spent doing things. So 62 hours in a month when I am someone who works full time is pretty good. I just have to be careful of burning out. But anyway, let's move on to life plus speedrunning plus more. So I did have quite a recent stint in speedrunning. I was in the Breathlight 80% tournament and I got pretty far considering how little I've been playing the game in recent years. So that was quite cool. And then I tried some of the new glitches in Tears of the Kingdom 80% and then I was like, I'll just stop and wait till Switch 2. It's literally coming out at that point in time it was coming out in a few weeks. I was like, I'll just stop and wait till the Switch 2. And this is outdated now because I will get my hands on the Switch 2 in like 4 days. On Thursday night after work, I'll be picking that up, which will be cool. So it'll be fun to try the original and remasters of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom on the new console and see. It would be fun to try some speedruns. We'll see. No, I've got this idea in my head that I'd like to do something like all dungeons, but any percent brain go brr. So we'll see what happens. And I don't have that much time, but ultimately all dungeons isn't really that long of a speedrun, so whatever. Life is busy, working full time, committing to gym 4 days a week, and trying to get a couple hours of Korean immersion in each night leaves only a little bit of time for gaming. So this is in respect to like speedrunning, so I definitely can't expect to be like an ex-world record holder that I once was, but you know, I can still have fun. It's just I have to try and be a bit more realistic with my goals and expectations. But my personality, I've always been someone who enjoys speedrunning the most when I feel good at it, when I'm competitive. Which is quite a hard habit to break because it seems quite deeply rooted in my personality. But if I'm not having fun, there's no point forcing it really. And I don't mind some casual gaming. Playing games outside of speedrunning and programming for me too is a big hobby, so it is hard to fit everything I want to do into a week and make time for a social life too. But ultimately, consistency is key. Consistency is king. That's what they say. But I have been doing a lot of Korean immersion and study over the last 1 to 2 weeks especially, which has really improved my level of understanding, which is pretty great. I have been reading an intermediate book. It's like short stories. I surprise myself with how well I'm able to understand what's going on in the novel, which is quite impressive. It's weird. It's a weird thing because in my head, I know what happens in the book I've read. So I understand the Korean content I've read, but I wouldn't be able to explain that content in Korean. So if someone asked me to say, hey, can you like tell me what that book was about in Korean, I'd be like, it's kind of like the understanding is sitting in my brain in English, which is a really bizarre thing to think about. I read this content in Korean, but what happens in that content sits in my head in English. I guess that's something that just takes a lot of time to sink in. But on the topic of spending a lot of time studying Korean over the last 1 to 2 weeks, I do need to make sure I'm not overdoing it. Burnout is real, so as long as I'm having a lot of fun immersing and don't feel like I'm putting things on the back burner, then it's totally fine. But if it starts to become unfun and too much, then I need to recognize and adjust. So, yeah. And also I made this point here. So it is hard to fit everything I want to do into a week and make time for a social life too. I seem to be a very ambitious person, maybe too ambitious for my own good these days. And I work full time, so oops. I just have a lot of things I enjoy doing, so it's hard to, you either give everything a little bit of time and then never really get good at anything, or you kind of prioritize some things over others. that's sort of where I've been at. I did actually write a lot more throughout the month at different points in times, but I kind of feel like I've already extended this video by a lot. It's already 16 minutes long. I've rambled forever. Anyway, so thanks for taking the time to watch and listen to this video. I know it's quite different to what I normally do, but I hope it was fun. If you like it and you want to see more, let me know in the comments. That would be great. If you didn't like it, you can say so too. I don't mind, whatever. And if the music is annoying, tell me. I kind of kept it in because maybe it fills in the gaps a little bit, but if it's annoying to hear me over the music, then tell me and I won't do it again. Anyway, thanks for watching. Farewell, friends.